Riley Gaines successfully BTFO'd Megan Rapinoe. Now she set her sights on somebody that beat her in a previous competition. Sounds like a sore loser to me, but it's fine, okay? Riley Gaines is one of these situations where I actually kind of support her endeavors because she is putting her money where her mouth is, and she seems to have a long history of being a conservative, so you know what, she didn't necessarily vote for this stuff, so I believe her advocacy for, just women in women's sports does come from a position of legitimacy, but we're still going to have some laughs over top of this because this entire situation is too funny not to. So take that. Oh, this take is selfish and shows utter disregard for women. Riley Gaines slams former swimming rival Lia Thomas and his broad back for demanding Biden let trans students compete in all sports. Yeah, Lia Thomas has came back, and because there's no more competitions to outright destroy, is just taking up the whole activist side of this stuff. Well, that makes sense. Former college swimmer Riley Gaines has slammed her controversial trans rival Lia Thomas after Thomas called on President Biden to let transgender student athletes compete against their chosen gender unimpeded. Gaines tweeted, "This take is selfish, shows an utter disregard for women. The Biden administration is actively and aggressively working to pass laws to erase decent and fair treatment of women in sports." Well, it's actually not decent or fair. It's actually preferential and well subsidized because if women's sports needed to exist on its own merits, nothing would exist. Maybe lingerie football. Maybe strip basketball. Like, outside of that, there's not. Oh, beach volleyball. There you go. Actually, I have one. That's out there. That one would survive. But outside of that, like, come on now. Decent and fair. Bruh. Are you really trying to say you would have won a national title against men? No, you're only ranked like 437th. Like, come on, unless everybody else broke a leg or something, okay, unless you can hire all the folks that were working for Nancy Kerrigan back in the cut, you would have had a tough time. Does it not break your heart to see women lose out on these opportunities? No, you can. It's obvious that Lia has zero shame. You remember that report where he was walking around at full attention in the locker room? It's like there's exposing a loophole and then there's exposing something else. Like, Jesus. The Biden administration's proposed bill denies science, truth, and common sense. More on that before the end of the video. Gaines was left disgruntled after Thomas appeared in a video slamming Biden's proposal to alter the current Title IX civil rights law, which prohibits sex-based discrimination in schools. Yeah, Title IX's a joke and it should be done away with instead of amended. Because all Title IX really does, it's supposed to be fair access to sports for both men and women. But what it's degenerated into is giving out the same amount of scholarships to both men and women, regardless of the merit of the sport. That's why there's large field hockey teams for women and other tertiary ancillary sports that nobody gives a shit about, because that same school probably has a fairly robust either baseball, basketball, or football program, all in the name of what? Decent and fair treatment. Yeah, sure. If you deserved those scholarships, if you worked and earned them, it'd be a totally different story, but we all know that that's cap. She said trans athletes should be allowed to compete in schools contests without exception. Biden's planned change prohibits schools from imposing blanket bans. I'd imagine it should be bans on trans athletes in a kindergarten through 8th grade. But yeah, there's actually some people, and yeah, that's what Lia Thomas looks like right now. Still got them big old shoulders, man. I don't know, like a cheap dye job and some goofy ass earrings isn't going to distract from that gigantic neck. Like, what is that, a 24-inch neck? Brother. And I understand that it's mid-April, okay? So you want suns out, guns out, but it's not really doing all that much to obfuscate from that very obvious Adam's apple. But ESPN's Sam Ponder backs Riley Gaines' opposition to trans athletes in women's sport. Oh, please be attractive, Sam. Are Earlier this month, SportsCenter anchor Sage Steele, who's also pretty based, and didn't she take some time away after ESPN was trying to force jabs on everybody? Oh, and who's ESPN's parent company? Oh, Disney, by the way. Anyways, defended former Kentucky swimmer Riley Gaines, who was attacked by trans activists while attempting to give a speech at San Francisco State University. On Wednesday, ESPN host Sam Ponder, 37, also supported Gaines in opposition of the bill presented by the Biden administration earlier this month. A proposed update to Title IX legislation would prohibit blanket bans on transgender athletes competing against women under the guise of competitive fairness. Gaines asked in a tweet showing a video from former Penn swimmer Lia Thomas calling the bill for the Biden administration a good start. That's fantastic. You could see where she used to be attractive, but, 37 and all. There's no need to go over this. She kind of looks like Ron DeSantis' wife if she spent too much time in the sun. Just saying. Ponder, the host of ESPN's Sunday NFL Countdown for football pregame. Words are hard sometimes. Quote tweeted Gaines and supported the former Kentucky swimmer. Why does New York Post every once in a while puts those stupid GIFs that are down there, and I don't know if I can actually have that on screen for too long because that does promote violence because YouTube's fucking retarded. Steele said, okay, I would take away so many opportunities for biological women and girls in sports. It's a shame that we needed to fight the integrity of Title IX in 2023 and the reason it was needed in the first place. Thomas competed at Penn for 3 years as a male before transitioning to female and setting a number of women's records. Gaines swam against Thomas in the national championship last year and lost. Loser. Okay, Gaines, tied for 5th in the 200-meter race. Yeah, sucks to suck, I guess. But yeah, no, there you can see they're standing on, I think, even ground. And yeah, that looks like the same type of person. That looks like fair competition, right? Well, don't worry. Get used to more scenarios like that in the future. Biden says he will veto the bill protecting female sports because, hey man, come on, just let the kids play gender affirming competitions, man. Come on, let's get on the right side of history. The Biden administration has announced that the president will veto H.R. 734 bill that seeks to protect female sports from transgender athletes. Yuck. 734, also known as the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. Yeah, that's definitely named by a Republican. Because just look at the way that the left perverted language when it comes to butchering children, okay? It's gender-affirming care. This bill right here is protecting women and girls in sports. Could have called it the Female Sports Safety Act. How about something like that? That would have been a little bit nicer for people to hear. As disgusting as that tactic is, it's also reality, so you gotta play by those rules if you want to advance anything. Like, come on, hey. You know the game as well as I do. Come on. Why do you think the Patriot Act passed? Because, oh, it's patriotic? No, it's just a big spying tool. Like, for God's sakes, there's nothing patriotic about it. That's what happens. That's what happens, man. Like, I like the naming of that, Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. What is it? Well, it's the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports. Oh, okay, cool, fantastic. But then a leftist could get up there and redefine what the words women and girls is, and then it can include all of those future Lia Thomases, and then we'd actually have some watchable female sports. The House Education and Workforce Committee already approved the bill 24-17, with the Democrats voting against it and every Republican voting for it. The administration strongly opposes the House passage of H.R. 734. If the president were presented with H.R. 734, he would veto it. Well, that's fantastic. That the president can go ahead and supersede the will of the people. That's wonderful, man. Paying attention to the whims of both of the coasts and 0.38% of the population. Good stuff. Biden administration addressed the issue by focusing on elementary schoolers who would miss learning life skills if the bills were passed. What the fuck? Okay, politicians would not dictate a one-size-fits-all requirement that forces coaches to remove kids from their teams. That's interesting. Now just run it back and do the jab when you had people under a one-size-fits-all doctrine, and if they didn't comply, they had to say goodbye from their chosen sport. Interesting how turnabout is not fair play. That's where, once again, if I were on these committees, that's where I would nail them and I'd have them dead to rights. But They won't, because Republicans, generally speaking, are goddamn spineless. Except for, I know, this is weird, 2 days in a row, we gotta praise Ron DeSantis. I know, it's very, very strange. It's quite a time to be alive. Florida bans lessons on gender identity and sexual orientation in all public school grades in the expansion of the so-called, well, it's the actually called Parental Rights and Education Bill. Good. On the Tuesday live stream, which shout out to you guys if you turned out for that. That was a hell of a lot of fun. You know, we talked about, well, the central crux in the central video that was out there. It was a roundtable discussion on Vice about, you know, what is the use of the American school system in today's day and age. And yes, this topic came up quite a bit. And I think that we all just kind of came around to the idea that teaching sexual material to children, pretty much off board. No, don't be doing any of that stuff. At worst, bring it up in middle school, high school, somewhere in that area. Otherwise, it's one of those things where it's the purview of the parents, and where they go before that, that's on them. It's not under the leisure of a public instructor who are barely competent to begin with. Shout out to Trans Joker. Educators in all Florida public schools for all grade levels, so Freudian slip there, will now be banned from teaching students about gender identity and sexual orientation in a sweeping move announced by Ron DeSantis' Board of Education on Wednesday. I'd imagine that the spin cycle on this is going to be legendary. The move marks a huge expansion of the Parental Rights and Education law, also dubbed the Idiot Bill by critics, which was signed last year by the governor and sparked a firestorm across the country. Yes, that initiated his recent tryst with Disney. While the previous version of the law prohibited instructions of these topics by children ages 5 through 8, the expansion would now apply to students up to the age of 18. Yeah, cool. You can't spew commie propaganda in your classroom. I consider this a gigantic W. The new rule, which would now apply to grades 4 through 12 as well, comes as DeSantis is touring, yes, in the early primary contest state of South Carolina, all that stuff. Yes, he's on his tour, he's talking with his wife, and I'm sure I couldn't imagine anything less engaging than a married couple discussing issues in front of a small gathering of individuals. Republican voters, meanwhile, are still waiting for him to announce his highly anticipated, by who? Who's highly anticipating that? Everybody's just looking at him as like, your serviceable backup. Yeah. A Trump super PAC released an ad last week calling DeSantis pudding fingers. Yeah, that shit's weird. We might have to look at that in a stream in the future, because it's very off-putting. But W Ron for expanding this, and no grooming tactics in the public school system. I think that that's a W. And then just your daily dose of Biden L's, and then coupled that with just some hilarious developments on the trans athletics front. And, well, you've basically got 2023 in a nutshell. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.